Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show, the Film Tangents Show.
Welcome back.
What's going
This is Jake's out for the week. This is Don Fry,
on?
and I'm going to be teaching Edward how to be more of a man.
You have to
Bunch of
teach me.
crybabies and sissies out there.
You have to teach me how I can find Bigfoot or how I can find the Loch Ness monster.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, they launched a massive Loch Ness monster, largest hunt in decades, takes place in Scotland this past
In
week.
Scotland, is that where it's like suspected that it is?
Yeah, that's where Loch Ness is, bro.
Really? The thing is that I don't know anything about any of this shit.
Well,
Like
yeah.
any of this, like.
Well, no one knew. Yeah, no one would know what Loch Ness even is if it weren't for the Loch Ness monster. You
Yeah.
know.
So basically, that it's the name of something in Scotland.
Yeah, it's a lake, Loch Ness. It's a loch.
I see.
It's a loch.
Huh.
We've got
Okay.
we've got a monster in this loch.
Do you believe in any of that shit? Like, do you believe in any of that, like Loch Ness or like Bigfoot?
No. Well, so it's one of those things where it goes back to the whole skepticism thing that I've talked about on a lot of these podcasts. As some may know, I had like this long kind of journey out of religion over the past
Mhm.
few years, because it's you want to be using skepticism it's a school of thought, I guess. I don't know if I don't really know what to call it. It's basically just a critical thinking a critical
Mhm.
thinking device, let's call it, where
A critical drinking device.
yeah. you know um
That's a good impression.
Thanks, man. I'm just on it with these impressions tonight. So skepticism is basically where it's not cynicism. It's not saying, so if you're cynical about whether it's like aliens, religion, the Loch Ness monster, it's sort of this idea of like, I really don't think there is a god, or some people will say there is no god. I know there's no god. It's da da da. But um, it's not that. It's just basically saying, hey, I'm not going to draw any conclusions until sufficient evidence comes around. And that was kind of where I was at with religion, where I was like, hey, you know what? I really don't think any of these religions, we really have any good basis for believing any of this stuff.
Mhm.
We just we don't have enough, and people will come back and say, hey, oh well, oh, well, Jesus lived in a time when there weren't cameras and this and that, and it's like, yeah, that's kind of the problem. We don't have reliable medical records that a dude came back from the dead. We don't have video footage of any sort of empty tomb, like any of that shit.
Mhm.
Um, it's basically not drawing. That's what it is for me. It's just not drawing conclusions.
In conclusion,
Yeah, yeah,
you're a man who lacks faith.
yeah, definitely, yeah.
And I'm
Because
playing,
faith,
I'm playing with
yeah, no, I know you are, but faith is the problem with faith is it's not, Matt Dillahunty, who's one of the premier kind of skeptics out there. He's had conversations with Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson, um, and he talks about how faith is not a reliable path to truth, because you can have faith in something that's correct or incorrect. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's faith. You just take it on faith, and we don't take anything on faith in our day-to-day lives ever.
Mhm.
We all so but we make these exceptions with things like, whether it's religion or believing in ghosts or believing conspiracies. It's like, hey, it's sort of the way I look at it is this, right? So back to the Loch Ness monster thing, is it's like a court of law. And it's like, is the Loch Ness monster, we don't have enough information to um you know deem the Loch Ness monster guilty of existing, right? So the Loch Ness Monster is, for now, not guilty of existing. Doesn't mean he's
Right.
innocent of existing.
Means that
Right?
he's not guilty of it.
Right. Because that's what you do in a court of law. When you say, hey,
Mhm.
we found so-and-so not guilty, you're not saying they're definitely innocent. You're just
Mhm.
saying, hey, we don't have enough to say that they're guilty, so we need to just let it go.
Mhm.
So that's where I come from with the Loch Ness Monster is, and anything else like that. And here's the thing, man. I love dinosaurs, man. I fucking
Of
love
course.
dinosaurs, dude. I'm a
Yeah.
fucking, I'm a geek over dinosaurs, man. It's one of the first things I liked as a kid was dinosaurs. I would think
Mhm.
that would be awesome if there was a dinosaur, well, plesiosaur, not a dinosaur technically, it's a marine reptile,
Mhm.
was
That's the kind of geek shit that gets people to unsubscribe from the channel. Like I
nah,
just
bro.
enough. No.
Nah, bro, our listeners are totally geeks, man.
Yeah, it's like, this guy's talking about the differences between dinosaurs and saying this and that and the other thing.
It's like I want to talk about films. That's not geeky. Um,
Yeah.
but so with the Loch Ness Monster, it's like fuck, dude. That would be awesome if there was a plesiosaur living in Loch Ness. But I
Mhm.
personally, I don't see any good reason to actually think there is a plesiosaur living in Loch Ness. As far as I'm concerned, that was pulled straight out of people's asses. It's based on, from what I understand, a couple of things. One, that famous photo that looks like the swan kind of neck coming out of the water.
Mhm.
First of all, that was a hoax. We know that. Second
That
of
was
all,
proven to be a hoax.
proven to be a hoax. It's
Mm.
like a toy submarine, I think. Um,
Yeah, this thing right here.
exactly. B, plesiosaurs did not have the neck muscles to actually crane their neck out of the water like that anyway. And the second thing is there was sort of a grainy image that was taken, it looked like at night,
Mhm.
in Loch Ness, where in the corner of the screen there's like some sort of mass. It's either some sort of big fish or, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I don't know why my microphone sometimes just disconnects from Teams, but it's fucking irritating.
It's a once a week thing. You don't use that microphone outside the podcast, right?
Right. I don't know
Other than
what.
for your rapping ventures.
Yeah, right.
So like once a week, it does that shit. It like disconnects at some point.
So, okay, so where was I?
You were talking about how something about the picture because you mentioned that it didn't have like the bone or like the power to crane its neck out of the water,
Okay.
and so I pulled up the picture of it, and that's why I did that. But you were talking about how something along the lines of like something in the picture led to something else, like
Yeah.
something within that black and white picture.
Okay, yeah. So check this out. I'm going to send this to you actually. So if
Mhm.
you those listening, if you look up Loch Ness monster photo underwater, it'll pull up this image. But I'm going to send it over to you right now. But basically in this photo, it kind of looks like it's a really grainy image. It kind of looks like a plesiosaur, but it's sort of like the way you could create something in the clouds. You know what I mean? Where it's just kind of like, that might not be anything.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know though. Taking a look at it, it kind of does look like a plesiosaur more than dude. It looks more like a plesiosaur than I remember. But you know what I mean? Like it's like the way you look at those paintings, and it's like, oh, if you look at it one way, it's a woman, an old woman, and you look at it another way, and it's a
It's
young girl.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like that thing that looks like the head might just be the tail of like some
Mhm.
fish, or it could just be a clump of algae or something. It's like we don't have the data, you know.
Was this taken by MIT? Or what is this?
I don't know. The Nessie Quest MIT Technology Review. I'm not sure. But yeah.
What does this manhunt for this thing even consist of? A bunch of James Camerons?
Well, what they did, from what I read, what they did was they sat on the lake and they had drones going over, and they had people basically just watching every, you know, every foot of the lake's surface that they could cover. They had like
Hmm.
thermal imaging, they had drones, I think, flying over. And the logic was because these things, if it's a plesiosaur, it has to come up for air at some point, right? So they were like, well, they were like, all right, we're just gonna fucking like, let's put an end to this right now. We're all just gonna watch and wait for it to come up for air, you
Hmm.
know. Um, which that takes a lot of manpower. The Loch Ness, I looked it up, I think is like 24 miles long or something like that. I mean, it's a
Really? Yeah,
fucking
that takes a lot. That requires a bunch of people to do.
yeah. So it was a bunch of scientists, I guess, that just got, were like, hey, let's just freaking watch the surface. But I don't know, man. Like, what goes through your mind when you look at that photo? I mean, because those are the two things from those two photos are what make people think it's a plesiosaur. Other than that, I don't even see good evidence that there's a plesiosaur in the water, let alone a quote unquote monster. It's like people are seeing there's big fish, there's huge fish in that lake. You know what I mean? And one of
Yeah.
those breaks the surface, you're gonna fucking shit your pants and think you saw something.
Yeah. I don't know, man, because it's like when I look at photos like this, it just kind of scare me,
Yeah,
you know. Because I already have like a mild fear of like water with any kind of substantial depth
yeah.
to obscure sight. Like if I look at the ocean and it's dark, then I'm afraid of it because I'm like you can't really see what's in there,
Oh hell yeah,
So it's like my brain it just gets hyperactive and it plays tricks on me where I'm like, oh, anything could be around me, underneath me.
yeah.
So I don't like that feeling. I don't like the sensation of like this like, oh my god, I can't see and I can't move because I'm not a fucking aquatic creature.
Yeah.
So this kind of image just like it brings fear to me because I'm like, oh my god, it's like what the fuck is that even? Um, I don't know. I think it's cool having this kind of like fantasy in our heads of being like there could be something in there.
Oh
Is
yeah.
it possible? Yes. Is it likely? No. It's highly
Exactly.
unlikely. There's a
Exactly.
fucking old dinosaur or old aquatic soar adjacent thing.
Marine
So
reptile.
yeah,
Or
like
not in
yeah,
this
exactly.
case, aquatic reptile.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know. It would be kind of cool. Like if they found it, I'd be like, oh, that's cool, because it's not like I'm fucking swimming in lakes and rivers and shit. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, and I
more
don't
likely that this exists than the fucking Bigfoot exists. That's for sure.
I don't know, man. There's I may have mentioned this before, but
Is
there's
this gonna become a Bigfoot podcast? It's like, oh, Bigfoot exists. It's out. It's out
well,
there, bro.
and I just
He's
want to
still
put out
out there.
and I want to put out there that I totally agree with you. I don't, just because when I talk about skepticism and stuff, it's just because I'm, I love, I really do. I'm passionate about science. I read about science and watch YouTube videos about science all the time, and I like to be scientific. With that being said, part of being scientific is being curious. And dude,
Mhm,
I love cryptozoology, like
mhm,
Bigfoot, Loch Ness monster, Yeti, like just all that shit's exciting. It's cool. And it's like, hey, let's go look. Let's find
mhm,
evidence. Let's try to see what's going on. What are people seeing? Why
mhm.
are people reporting a monster in the lake?
Right.
Um,
Are you part of the camp that thinks that Bigfoot existed but like maybe died or something?
I mean, that's plausible.
Yeah.
That's completely plausible. But I mean, there is a primatologist who I forget what his name is, but he actually he said I don't believe in Bigfoot. I have seen the evidence and just treat it as if I'm studying an existing animal. And he talked about how the best evidence we have are the footprints. And he talks about the footprints and he talks about how the footprints have friction ridges on them. They have scar tissue, like on them, and it's like that level of detail. If people are hoaxing, they're putting a lot of detail into these
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
Um, you know what I mean? Um, it was interesting to hear him talk. I watched he had a debate with this YouTuber who's also a primatologist named Gut Gibbon. That's her YouTube name. They had a debate
Mhm.
on Modern Day Debate about it. But yeah, I don't know. I think it definitely raises questions, but I don't know if that personally is enough. And I'm not a primatologist, so maybe to him that's a smoking gun, where to me, a layman, it's like it's not as compelling.
Mhm.
But he was talking about too, like the whole idea of one of people's major objections to Bigfoot is hey, well, someone would have seen one of these by now, and gotten video of it, or we would have come across a dead one. But he talks about, hey, there's plenty of black bear. How often do you come across a dead black bear?
Mhm.
And on top of that, he cited examples of animals in other parts of the world that live in extremely small populations that just inbreed.
Mhm.
And he I forget what the figure was, but he cited a very low number of individual animals that were living in a population. And if that was the case with Bigfoot, it'd be like, hey, yeah, no wonder they go completely undetected. There's like X amount of them. It's not that many.
Mhm.
Um, again, it, it's not, personally, the footprints and stuff. I don't think that's enough to say that there's an animal. I think we need bones. We need a body.
I'm laughing because I was thinking, I was like, what is this ocean here in my head? And I was like, oh, we just burned the forest down.
Yeah. And then it's
And
just
then,
a field of ash, Bigfoot standing there.
no, in my head, it was like, oh, and then the big monkey will just come out running. It would just, it's like, oh, there it is.
Like backs on fire. Oh God. Yeah. What's your where do you stand on Bigfoot? Are you a Bigfoot agnostic or Bigfoot
Look,
atheist?
look, man, look. I, as a man who did not grow up in this country, I have very like limited experience with these things because
Yeah.
the awareness that I had of things like the Loch Ness monster and like Bigfoot were entirely from like just like American cartoons,
Yeah.
like watching SpongeBob and shit like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
and them like referencing these things. That was like my introduction to it. Eventually, I learned that it was like, oh, this is not just a kid's joke, like because in my head I interpreted it as just some kind of like like, oh, this is just one of those things that adults like say, oh, the Bigfoot is coming. It's like, oh, it's one of those, like Santa Claus.
Santa Claus. Yeah.
Um,
There you go.
so eventually, I was like, "Oh no, this is something that actual adults are like questioning and being like, is this a thing?" You
Oh,
know?
dude.
Is it-
Dude, they're amateur Bigfoot hunters. Like
Yeah.
I watched a documentary on
So there's amateur time wasters. I would say.
Yeah, yeah. 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 Because I watched that documentary on Hulu, Sasquatch. It's like a 3-part documentary
Yeah,
where,
I remember you mentioned that. Yeah.
yeah, I think I talked about it on another episode, but it's that guy who was working on a marijuana farm in the 90s, maybe,
Mhm.
and some people came back. Some guy came back from a run and was like, like a drug run basically, and was like, hey, these guys that we went with got chopped, were mutilated and shit, and they're like, what that happened? Who did it? And he was like, it was a
Mhm.
Bigfoot. Dude, a Bigfoot killed them. And so that's where
Mhm.
the documentary they start investigating. The guy I mentioned, the primatologist, was actually interviewed in the documentary.
Hmm.
Um, I would recommend it. It's pretty good. I love that stuff, dude. Like that true crime or cryptozoology, those documentaries, like just those creepy ass documentaries, man. Those are fun.
Yeah.
But I used to watch those all the time as a kid. Like I would watch there was that show Is It Real on National Geographic.
Mhm.
I'd watch that as a kid. They'd have an episode about Bigfoot, episode about aliens, episode about ghosts. Shit
It's
was
funny that somebody would make like an "Is it real?" or aliens, because I feel like aliens is like the one thing that everybody has to just kind of be like, yeah, I guess so. You know, like we're
yeah.
just not in immediate contact with them, but we live in like in an ever expanding, like infinite universe. You know, so it's like obviously it's just not silly little humans wondering about Bigfoot. There's aliens out there, you know.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time. I keep saying it. It feels like every other podcast I go like, well, the aliens, you know. But I really do feel like the alien shit is just a matter of time. How that changes our perception of reality, I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the human psyche is so fragile, you know. Like when you think about the nature of humanity, you know, and when you think about people out with unlike, you know, fucking holding like picket fences with fucking shit, like you know,
Picket signs.
cardboard. Yeah, picket signs, not fences. Yeah, my bad. You know, but when you think about this shit, it feels like the human existence. It's such like a weird, like science experiment of being like, "Oh, those humans hate those other humans because those other humans do things that original humans don't like," you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, "Oh, oh,"
The
you know, so
wildlings.
exactly. So it just feels like such like a, you know, like it almost feels inevitable that like if we actually have like aliens, people are just gonna be like, well, God doesn't exist. Aliens exist and aliens are God. You know, like in some kind of Rick and Morty, like big head, you know, the big head
Yeah.
spoken or whatever. Because it feels like I don't know. It feels like human beings are like spineless, you know. It feels like a large portion of humanity. It's just like a spineless thing that or like a cockroach, you know, that it's just like, what is the easiest way forward? You know,
Yeah,
what's
what's the
the
easiest
least
thing to
resistance?
worship or the easiest
Exactly.
thing to cling on to? Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, there's certain preachers and shit that I've heard, unfortunately, had the displeasure of hearing talk, and I mean, they've said like, "Oh, aliens would completely, in my mind, disprove God," you know, in their mind, and of
Mhm.
course, there's a lot of people who would, you know, keep their faith. I don't know. Yeah, I agree. I actually agree with the preachers that, you know, I don't agree with their religion, but
But do you agree that that it like invalidates the religion?
I totally agree with that. Because think
Yeah.
about it. I mean, you have this God who's supposed to be like this, you know, this man. I mean, not a
Mhm.
man, but he's like human like,
He's
and
a
he made
man
us in
boy.
his image, you know, it's and then if there are other intelligent sentient life forms on other planets, it's like, well, where do they fall into that? And in the Bible, it seems very explicit in the fact that like Earth is sort of the center of maybe not the physically the center of the universe, but it's the center of it's the hot spot. It's where
Right.
everything takes place in the Bible. It's you
Right.
know, and the beginning it talks about how the earth was made, and then in
Right.
Revelation it talks about how the earth is gonna end, you know, and
There's no point within it in which God, you know, that's like an instant teleportation technique like Goku and tries to like, oh, this is dynamic planet and now here with dynamics and
yeah,
yeah,
because they didn't
there's
even know
no
what planets
like
were back then. It's like, you know, they just thought we lived on some floating pancake on
yeah.
a like if you look at Hebrew cosmology, I mean, the way they thought it was we lived on this, you know, flat surface on
Mhm,
top of water, and then there
mhm,
was like a dome around everything. Which I mean, if you look up at the sky, and you lie on your back and you look up at the sky, it does look like a dome, you know? So
mhm.
you can see how ancient people thought that. And then, like, you literally just
Exactly.
opened the dome and there was heaven above it,
Yeah,
you know?
but it's fascinating because also just depending on where you live, if you get that feeling of like there's like dome feeling. Because
Yeah.
let's say, for instance, like I think whenever I like travel overseas, it feels a lot that way. You know,
Yeah.
it feels like, oh shit, the sky suddenly feel in this country the sky is even more dome like. It feels like
Yeah.
it's just like that. You know, um, yeah.
But so, yeah. And like for me,
Not
not
ever.
even aliens, you know what? For me, the smoking gun to me, that invalidates religion even more than aliens, but at least
Mm-hmm.
Christianity for me,
Mm-hmm.
is the fucking existence of other species of humans that
Mm-hmm.
have gone extinct. Neanderthals, um, Australopithecus, that was like an early human,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all those different, there were all these different species of human, and we're the Homo sapiens are the only ones left. But like, that disproves to me, that's like, okay, that fucking invalidates an Adam and Eve. Because there's
Mm-hmm.
no point where, if you know how evolution works, evolution is like, Richard Dawkins, I think, described it this way, but pretty much all scientists will tell you that the way evolution is, if you look at the fossil record and the way it works, is like there's no, it's sort of like with a human where you're growing and it's like you have a baby that grows into a toddler. There's no one
Mm-hmm.
moment where it's like, okay, this baby is now a toddler.
Mm-hmm.
It's just gradual. Like there's
Let me ask
really
you.
no cutoff. So with that being said, there's no fucking Adam and Eve.
Mhm.
If if
Let me
if
ask
you
you
if you
this.
look at it on a macro level with species, but go ahead.
Let me ask you this. Would you experiencing like a supernatural event transform you into some kind of belief system? For
um
let me explain. And
yeah, go ahead.
by natural event, I mean like if you interacted with like a ghost, how
Mm.
would you feel about that?
It would just depend on how much information I could draw from it, you know?
Mhm.
It would depend on how accurately I could explain what I had seen.
In my head, I'm thinking that in my head, I'm thinking that you like interact with the ghost, and at some point, you're like, "Oh my god, you're a ghost," and the ghost is like, "I'm a ghost," and then at some point, somebody walks into the room and they look at you, and they go like, "Jake, what's all of this all over the room?" And you just go like, "Oh, it's ectoplasm."
Ectoplasm. Like in South Park. Oh, there's a spooky ghost. Yeah, I mean, if it was like the movie Ghost and there was just like I don't know, but even in that scenario though, like if I was living out the movie Ghost, I mean, I would actually be more inclined to think I was mentally ill.
Yeah.
Like there's just too many problems because we don't have the ability to, because people claim all sorts of these things, and no matter how vivid your experience is, we just can't verify your experience when it comes to the supernatural. Like if I say I experienced, you know, if I show up, or if I get airlifted to a hospital and I say,
Mhm.
or someone else more likely says a truck hit them, but let's say I'm conscious and I say a car hit me, we can
Mhm.
verify my experience because first of all, we know cars exist. We can see the injuries on my body,
Mhm.
and we can. There's a thousand different ways we can investigate. Maybe there's cameras around. Maybe there's tire tracks that maybe the driver stopped. It's like we can investigate that experience. But if I say, "Hey, I heard the voice of God
Mhm.
in my head," or I'll
Mhm.
I'll just stick to your example. I saw a ghost and I talked
Mhm.
to it, and I verified that it was a ghost because I stuck my hand through the person.
Mhm.
It's like I could tell other people that about that experience, but they have no way to verify my experience. And in turn, me personally, I have no way to verify whether what I saw was a ghost or if I'm going fucking nuts.
Right.
That's the problem. So to answer your question, um, maybe, but I would be more inclined to think I needed to get on some medication.
Now, let me ask you this. If we were to obtain something verifiable, right? Like if somehow we had like undisputable footage of some kind of like um ghost activity, do you think that that would be enough to convince people of like the existence of like the supernatural or the existence of like a higher entity or like an afterlife or something like that?
No, because we already have videos of ghosts. Like we
What do you mean?
have Well, we have videos of ghosts. If you go look up videos of ghosts, you're gonna find videos of ghosts all over the internet, bro.
Exactly, but those videos of ghosts also just have a comment from somebody being like fake, you know.
Well, yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
exactly.
What I'm saying to you is that
How do
it's
we
like, what
verify
if,
it's a ghost?
exactly, but what I'm saying to you is like, what if we had something where it's like, I mean, I wouldn't know like how to like necessarily like describe it, but what if we had some kind of like live footage that everybody was watching at the same time, you
Yeah,
know, like a fucking football game or something.
yeah.
And in the middle of the stadium as they're playing football, it's like, oh my God, what the fuck is that thing? There's like a ghost, you know.
Hmm.
Somebody runs right through it, everybody stops and look at it and then just disappears. And it's like, oh, you know, that wasn't a hoax. It was actually like some kind of thing that happened.
Yeah, and you have 80,000 people that saw a ghost.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard because then it's like, fuck, dude.
Because then I feel like with that, I feel like that wouldn't necessarily, I guess, confirm the existence of like a higher entity. I guess it would just, I guess, give us some kind of something to think about the
And
afterlife, and being
yeah.
like, oh, I guess maybe when humans die, something happens to that. Maybe some humans linger around here in a non-physical form or something like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing with yeah, I mean, ghosts wouldn't even that's the thing with skepticism too. It's like you can't make leaps, you just have to. So if we learned that ghosts were real, it'd be
Mhm.
like therefore ghosts are real. You know, we can't then say, "Oh, then there's a god." It's like, "No, fuck." You know, that's but people would say that. That's the problem.
Right.
People would make that leap and say, "Therefore God exists because the
Mhm.
supernatural exists." It's like, "Well, no." You know, we don't but in your scenario, I mean, so and in your scenario, do we know for a fact, like let's just set up a parameter here. Do we know for a fact that no one that the technicians in the stadium are projecting a hologram or something?
Yeah, we know that for a
We
fact.
know that for a fact in this scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess 80,000 people and we all saw a ghost in the stadium and it appeared and then disappeared. Um, I guess I think all we could say is that it was some sort of entity that was there, but a ghost is a person who died, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. So
And
then it
in
would
that
have to be
case, it's like, well,
identified.
this could
Yeah.
be a superhuman. It doesn't even have to be. We don't know that it's a dead
Yeah.
person that came back to life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just
But
opens
it's
so
hard
many
because
more
I think
questions.
there's
Yeah.
people that are like rolling their eyes probably listening to this, like, oh my God, Jake's such like a doubting Thomas. And it's like, well, yeah, this is how science works. It's like you can't just verification takes a long fucking time. I mean, we've
Yeah.
been making adjustments to modern science for 1,000 years. You know,
Mhm.
um, what about you, man? I mean, like, what would convince you, I guess, of ghosts existing besides that scenario, or do you
I
believe in
don't know, man,
ghosts?
because it's like I'm in the position where I feel like don't want to see ghosts, and I do, like in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
You know, I have that curiosity of being like, oh, I would love to have some kind of supernatural, like, you know, experience. Never had one. Met many people who claim they have. You
yeah,
know, it's kind of a thing where I come from.
yeah.
These are you know fucking one a dozen people. You know, like or whatever the saying is. You
There's
know,
phantasmas, bro.
exactly. There's a lot of phantasmas. So that's like common for people to be like, "Oh, I stole my great grandma" and shit like that. Um, something that I feel like would be maybe positive towards kind of having some kind of revelation with something like that for me. Because like you, I feel like if I had some kind of experience like that, I'll be like, "Oh, I must be losing my mind," you know,
Yeah,
or you know, or there would be something like, "Oh, I'm sleep deprived, I'm hallucinating, or something's happening," you
right.
know. But I feel like if I had an experience like that, say that I had an experience like that, and it was like me with like my siblings, you know, or like me and you know, it's like, well, we both saw that thing. Then it's like, well, we both cannot be hallucinating unless we
Right.
both eat something funky, you know.
Exactly.
Um, so I feel like there's relevance in like a group experience of being like, did we all witness the same thing? Yes, we did. Then there's something going on, you know, because we know that the brain in and of itself, the brain can play games on people. Because I've had you know history with like fucking sleep paralysis and like very vivid dreams, you
Yeah.
know, where I've had kind of like wake states of seeing things. And obviously from that I know that the brain can really just play with you. And you can just be sleeping and
Exactly.
unable to move with your eyes open, and your brain thinks you're sleeping, but your eyes are open, and so your brain's creating things that you're seeing, you know. So it's strange. Like the human experience is strange, man.
Yeah,
You know.
and you misreport things, you misremember. Like people
Hmm.
get confused easily. That's the whole thing with the Loch Ness monster. I mean, you can just imagine being a fisherman on that lake. You know, you're a fisherman and you fucking yeah, this is how I provide, you know, a fucking fish and a drink on the lake. No.
I saw
Um
a big fish.
yeah. No, but you can imagine being some fisherman on the lake and you're just surrounded by this fucking behemoth, you know, lake, this freaking endless
Hmm.
ocean of water.
Hmm.
And some huge ass fish breaks the surface for a second.
Hmm.
And then you're like, fuck, 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 you know, and then 10 minutes later, you have a memory of, you know, a plesiosaur head breaking the surface, you know, but it wasn't that. You're just misremembering, you know. But because you've been conditioned of Loch Ness Loch Ness Monster, plesiosaur lives there, then your mind starts filling in gaps that it need not fill, basically, but it
Is there
does.
is there a theory of what could be like what is there a theory of like a big fish that could be on that lake that actually exists, you know, or that it's actually plausible?
Yeah, I think big fish do have been confirmed to be in that lake, like huge fish. I mean,
Hmm.
biggest fish in Loch Ness. Um, and I mean, by the way, you know, the Loch Ness monster, though, I will say it's not impossible because we
Hmm.
have found prehistoric animals thought to be extinct before.
Hmm.
People out there, if you want to look that up, it's called the coelacanth, and that's a species of fish that we thought was extinct. And I think in like the 20s we found it. Um, let me see. Biggest fish in Loch Ness. The largest fish caught by rod in Loch Ness is a 44-pound salmon. I mean, yeah, Loch Ness Monster Hunter concludes it's a big catfish. 13 feet. A Wells catfish, European catfish, can grow up to 13 feet.
I think it's
Yeah,
huge.
it's a big ass fish, dude. Victorians introduced the fish to the dark waters of the loch to provide
That's a
sport.
humongous catfish.
Exactly. So it's like we already know. There's your monster right
I
there.
mean, this thing's gigantic. Look at that guy. He looks tiny.
Yeah. 13
Mhm.
feet. I mean, that's unbelievable, dude. So, yeah. And I think, you know, you're right with the whole mind playing tricks on you with ghosts. I mean, dude, I think I said this on a previous episode, but like, I always tell people I don't believe in ghosts and I've seen ghosts.
Mhm.
Like, I've seen ghosts, you know, but I don't
Yes.
think they were actually ghosts, you know. I may have told this story before, but I remember in when I was like 11 or 12 years old, I was having it was during October, and I was having just kind of anxiety from watching too many horror movies, I think.
As it goes.
Yeah, and I remember because at that age I would catch like horror movies on AMC, and then I'd fucking regret it after because you know they're always playing in October.
Mhm.
And I remember waking up at you know, like 6 in the morning to catch the bus, and I turn the light on and I'm laying in bed just kind of like out of it, you know, and I look at my door and it's just pitch dark. The hallway's pitch dark outside. And I see for a split second, I kind of blinked and I saw a little girl in like a dirty gown
Mhm.
walk by my room, you
It's the
know?
classic one.
Exactly.
It's the little girl one.
Um, but it's like, you know, even if ghosts existed, even if we knew ghosts existed, that house, nobody died there. We watched it built. We bought the land before
Yeah.
while the house was still being built.
Yeah.
um, so you know, but yeah, people get confused. I mean, dude, if if someone paid me to go spend the night at the Amityville house, I'd see ghosts, dude. I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to go in there.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go in there either.
Fuck
Because
no.
just, I feel like sometimes just the thought is enough to make you restless, you know?
Exactly.
Just the thought of being like, oh, there could be a ghost where I'm at. It's enough to be like, oh, every sound, every creak. I
Yeah.
can't sleep in a situation like that.
Dude, have you seen the picture of the purported Amityville ghost, like the little boy ghost?
Is there the one like behind some stairs or something?
Yeah,
Ooh, I've seen it.
the ghost boy. Fuck, dude. That's one of the creepiest
Amityville
photos ever.
ghost. I'm looking it up just to see it again. I'm hurting myself. Shouldn't do this. Oh yeah, there it is. Ooh,
Oh,
oof, oof,
so creepy,
oof.
dude. That's a
Ugh,
that's a creepy ass photo.
yeah, ugh, ugh.
The
It
not
gives
the
me shivers.
Yeah, the non zoomed out version is way scarier than the zoomed in version too, where you just see
Yeah,
those little eyes like in the corner of the off to the side of the screen.
yeah,
Fuck, dude. So scary. But yeah, I
yeah.
mean,
I'm still looking at it. Ugh, it's so creepy.
yeah. That photo scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, oof, oof. Just looking at it just gives you shivers. Just looking at that shit.
Yeah, I remember my going back to the religion thing. I remember when I was in when I was like 10, 11 years old, in the Lutheran church, we did catechism, which was basically a 2-year course where it was like every Sunday we'd have like 1 or 2 hours of Bible study, and then you get
Hmm.
confirmed in the church or whatever at the end of it all.
Were you eventually confirmed?
Yeah, I was, but I remember like the professor used to always just he was like a preacher and he used to always just shit on evolution and stuff, and he was he talked about Neanderthals one class, and he was like, huh, those scientists, I mean, you just dig up some deformed skeleton and you call it a Neanderthal, what's that? Like,
Hmm.
how frustrating must that be to be a scientist who's just spent their whole fucking life researching this stuff, and some preacher tells you that you can't tell the difference between a deformed skeleton and the skeleton of a different species of human. Like,
Hmm.
fuck, dude. But there's a reason that in that scenario, like, again, you were talking about the aliens as a smoking gun. I think that is the smoking gun for there being
Hmm.
no Adam and Eve.
Hmm.
And if there's no Adam and Eve, there's no original sin and no reason for Jesus, and that it just falls apart. Like that to me, the fact that there were other species of human beings, like
Hmm.
that's a smoking gun for me. I mean, it doesn't completely disprove the entire religion, but to me, it's just like a. So maybe smoking gun's not the right word. To me, it's a very eyebrow raising thing where it's just like,
Hmm.
okay, so there were these other species of human, and I'm like, I definitely understand, but that's why that preacher doesn't want to admit the existence of Neanderthals because he fucking
Hmm.
knows that the logical part of his brain,
Is that something
small as
that
it
like
might be, he knows that that's a problem. So he's like
is that
saying that it's a
something
deformed person.
is that something that people are is that something that actually the church is like in conflict with? Is that like a thing?
Yeah, it is. I mean, well, so there's the whole like Answers in Genesis thing. They're like a
Hmm.
creationist foundation. They run the Creation Museum and I think it's in like Texas or New Mexico or something.
Of
But
course.
the guy who runs it debated Bill Nye. They have that. He was the guy who had that big debate with Bill Nye a few years ago: creation versus evolution.
Hmm.
Um, and their whole I looked it up. Their whole thing is that, oh well, you know yeah, Neanderthals and stuff existed. We can only conclude that those came after Adam and Eve and were like, some genetic sort of mutation. And I'm like, okay. So there is evolution? I'm confused. I thought you said there
Hmm.
wasn't. Like,
Hmm.
but but we know that those other species of humans came before Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
The whole thing is, it's not even worth talking about. It's like, fuck, dude. There's a reason scientists all fall on one side of the fucking issue.
Yeah.
And it's the
Yeah.
same reason they all fall on the world being round issue.
Yeah. Which to me that has always been like the funniest like of the like the tinfoil conspiracy
Yeah.
theories. That has always been the funniest thing.
Yeah. I've
That has
tried
always been
to
the funniest one. It's like
yeah.
how
I've tried to watch those debates like with flat earthers. I can never get through them. I have no idea what the flat earthers are even talking about.
because look man, I've never watched like any of those. I've never watched any of those, like any of those fucking debates or anything like that. Because this is like, what is the debate? Because it's like when you're presented with so much information,
Yeah.
at some point, whoever the debater is has to just be a person who is just unwilling to accept facts. Just like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
convince themselves of something, you know, which to me is like the funniest shit. When any time that I remember that B.O.B. that's like the thing with that
Yeah, the rapper, yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, that's right. That guy's a fucking flat earther.
Yeah.
So strange. So strange. How did you become one of those people?
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, like if you like me, I mean, I've been I'm not trying to sound like some kind of scientist here or anything, but I have been reading about and watching, like, essentially studying evolution and prehistory and paleontology and all that kind of stuff since I was, 6 or 7 years old. I mean,
Hmm.
I was always watching any dinosaur documentary I could get my hands on at the age of 6 to like the
Hmm.
age of 10 or 11. I was just gobbling them up. And if you study evolution and all of that prehistory and fossils and all of that stuff to even the just beyond a surface level extent, you
Hmm.
realize that creationism is just as like dumb as flat earth. Like it's just
Right.
as out there, but it seems not quite as bad. I think people would put them in like a lower tier, a slightly lower tier than flat earthers, because
Hmm.
the round earth seems so obvious because we have actual pictures and stuff of it. But really, dude, the evidence for evolution and everything is just as good as the evidence that the earth is round. I mean, that's the point I'm trying to make. So, um, yeah,
I was thinking.
I love that
Go ahead.
meme. I love that Family Guy moment where Peter gets like the IQ test, and then
Mm.
it's like the doctor has that chart, and it's like there's like regular people, then mentally handicapped, and then below that is creationists.
That's really fun. Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna. I was just like picturing the like. I was just putting myself in the shoes of somebody who believes the Earth to be flat, and I was just kind of like, oh, how would I react if I walked into a room that had one of those like globes of the Earth that you can like spin?
It doesn't spin, god damn it.
It's such a strange thing, man. But it always fascinates me, you know, how people arrive at these things, like what the human psyche is, you know, and how people just arrive at conclusions and they go like, this is what I believe. People form groups around that, being like, oh yeah, we all believe the same thing, although none of us have a basis to believe this. Because I feel like shit with shit like flat Earth, it's just a little bit even crazier. I feel like, you know, because it's just like everything points to the contrary, you know.
Yeah.
Everything points to the contrary, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you guys doing? You know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
my thing with religion. It's always just kind of like, why does everything not only not support what you're saying, but also points to the contrary? Like another good
Right.
example is the whole Exodus. There's no evidence that whatsoever that there were actually large populations of Jewish slaves in Egypt, like at
Mhm.
any point. Like
Mhm.
there may have been small groups of Semitic people that lived in Egypt at one point, which is why
Mhm.
how they knew what Egypt was, so they could write the story.
Mhm.
Um, but the whole, it's like, not only because people, they're like, oh well, we estimate that, in this century, during this dynasty of Egypt, the Egyptians were, down bad because of the Exodus. And then it's like, you go look, and I like looked it up, and it's like, the archaeologists are like, that dynasty was the most prosperous dynasty in Egypt's history. And it's like, why does everything point to the exact opposite of what you're saying?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with like the Garden of Eden 6,000 years ago, and scientists are like, actually the world is 6 billion years old, or 4 billion, 3 billion, something like that. It's like, why is
Yeah.
everything pointing directly in
the
the
opposite
other
direction.
direction?
Yeah. Like, it
Like,
sounds like all
I
these
would
things
get
are
if it,
estimations.
yeah, it's like, I would get if maybe you didn't have things that supported your side, but you also have things that support the direct opposite.
It's interesting how stuff like this just like leads to confusion. Like stuff like this just leads to mass confusion. So I remember as a kid, that's how I thought. That's how old I thought the world was. Like when I was like a little kid, because it was like, oh, this is what they're saying to me at church. So it's like, this is what I believe to be the
Yeah.
truth. But then you learn something else. You're like, wait, so what's the truth? Like,
The devil
is
gave
that
me
the
those dinosaur documentaries, bro.
and it's confusing, man. It's confusing when you're a kid because it's just like, what's the truth? What am I being told?
Yeah, because you think
Unlike you,
adults
the
are
world
supposed
didn't
to
give
know
me
what they're.
dinosaur documentaries. The world gave me Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
The world gave me Goku.
Well, yeah, it is confusing because when you're a kid, the adults are supposed to be the ones who know what they're fucking talking about. But when you get older, you realize that adults are running around saying that the Earth is flat and that the 2020 election was rigged, but the 2016 one somehow wasn't, and it's just like, oh fuck, like people are just living in La La Land. But I mean, I was the same. It was the same for me. Like when I was a kid, I mean, God just existed. It's like, oh, God. Yeah, God. We go to heaven when we die.
Yeah,
And then you get older, and you're like, oh, fuck. There's like other religions. People disagree on this shit. That's kind of weird.
yeah,
And then the onions, the onion starts to peel back. The older you get.
right. Yeah, it's just interesting though how there's like folks that the older they get, the more like corrupt that onion becomes in the sense that it just becomes unpeelable.
Yeah, yeah,
There's no
yeah.
peeling back this onion. This onion is done.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah. It's
God.
it's it's weird, man. I guess shifting a little bit of the conversation, staying in this lane that we've been, but shifting it a little bit towards film.
Yeah, let's do that.
The the biggest culprits to me of just bad movies, like the biggest culprits of bad movies are religious movies.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are those are the biggest culprits of all. And I say this is because even, because I want to clarify something, I guess before we move forward, and it is that, I am a all encompassing man in a way, but ultimately I am a very spiritual person, and I do believe in the existence of, like something greater than humans, without the evidence to know whether or not that's true. I
Yeah.
am a spiritual person.
Yeah.
So I
I'm
just
not
want to
gonna
clarify
judge.
that.
I'm not gonna judge you, man, either. I
Yeah,
mean,
and you know
fuck.
that about.
I
Yeah,
try.
I
I
just want
go
to
off
clarify
on
that
this.
for the audience.
Yeah, I go off on this stuff too. But I tell like when I go off about it around my my family, I also tell them like this. All of this being said, don't be afraid to be religious and tell me about it.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna bust
yeah,
your balls about it.
yeah. I wanted to clarify my stance for the audience, if at some point it was like ambiguous. But moving aside from that, like because obviously I grew up like with these things. Um, and obviously as I've grown, I've kind of shaped my own understanding of the world and the universe and like of what I believe.
Yeah.
But that being said, even though when I was like deep in the trenches,
Yeah. Yeah.
even when I was like, yeah, this is what we're going for here, even then, you know, even then, I would watch these religious movies, specifically like the God is Not Dead movies, and I would,
Oh.
this is some horse shit. Like I would
Oh.
the greatest horse shit ever made. And most like fucking God religion based like movies are the worst.
Oh
They're the
yeah.
worst, man.
Yeah. I mean, I've been lucky to dodge most of those, except for I actually like, I like Passion of the Christ. Like, there's some great,
The Passion of the Christ is pretty good.
yeah, there's some great religious films. I still want to. Ten Commandments is on my watch list with Charles Charlton Heston, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, biblical epics are awesome. But yes, those like infomercial for the religion type
Mhm.
movies. Yeah,
Mhm.
I've seen trailers for those, and that's all I'm like, fuck,
You've never
fuck.
seen one of those? You've never
Yeah.
seen one of those fucking movies? Oof, man.
I will tell you though, I was exposed like in the because I was in the Catholic church growing up, and then we went to the Lutheran church, so I was in that for a little while, and both of those I was exposed to sort of the after school special type shit, you know.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if I remember anything really specific from those. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, they're real. Yeah, they're always just really silly and so
Yeah.
obviously that's their job to be so preachy.
No, dude,
Do you have like a memory of anyone that stands out in your mind as like just horrific like scenes? Like what's your
dude, listen,
experience?
man, listen. Like this is one of those things where it's like some of the movies that I've given like really poor ratings on my letterbox. Like if you go, are these movies?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I think I've seen like God's Not Dead one, maybe two, but definitely one. And it
Oh,
has like a one. It has like a half a star on Rotten Tomatoes. It's not Rotten Tomatoes on my letterbox. It's like half a star movie, because it was just horrendous. It was such a bad like movie experience because we watched this at church, and the church made such a big event out of it, where it's like everybody they made it one of those community events where it's like you pay. It's like, oh, we're gonna pay to watch this fucking movie at church on a Saturday night.
you're gonna
Instead of
tithe.
doing it, instead of doing anything else. Because they're because if there's something good that churches do, there's a lot of churches just do a lot of things for the community, and I can't hate on churches for that.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely not. Yeah, of
a lot of
course.
them provide like meals, financial support, a lot of it, through the work that
They
I
just make
do.
you sit through a sermon first. They hold your
Exactly.
sandwich hostage.
It's like they hold you hostage, but they do a lot of work in the community, to this day, actively. So I have to commend churches for that. But we're doing that for the sake of, getting funds to then be able to like, provide meals and stuff for people. So it's like, oh, the church members come and let's do this. Like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
But we did that, and I go and I sit down. And by this point, you know, I was already like, by this point, I think I was like 14 or something.
Yeah.
So, and I'm saying that because this is like around the age where I was starting to think about movies like in a more serious way, where I was like, oh, there's such a thing as good filmmaking. There's
Mm.
such a thing as like good storytelling, that's like I'm starting to comprehend, And also I had been exposed to a lot of movies that since then I've come to understand that I was like, oh, this is great, this is what great. This is what's this is like that Scorsese meme that I referenced. I think last week. It's
Cinema.
like cinema, absolute cinema. So I had seen some classics by that point too. I'd seen some Tarantino films. I had seen some Scorsese films. I had seen some shit. So I sit on this theater. I sit at church, and we start watching. Fucking God's Not Dead, and I'm like, oh my god, like immediately I'm like, what is like? Oh, I'm like, what? Oh my god, this is horrendous. You know, um, this is like the dialogue, how the information is being presented, how like how the characters that are like non-believers are presented.
Yeah, they're presented as idiots or like snobs.
Exactly. Like the movie presents like any character that it's like atheist or non-believing or that has even a different opinion. It doesn't matter that it's like, even if there's a character that is like, oh, I believe, that there's like a force in the universe, blah blah blah. Even people who are like spiritual characters, it's like, no, you're wrong, but you're just wrong differently.
Yeah.
Everybody's wrong here. We all have to arrive at the same conclusion.
Yeah, yeah. It's like we're allowed to question as long as all our questions beget the correct answers.
Exactly. So, suffice it to say, this is a movie. Spoilers
Well,
for
Edward, the spoilers in the title that God's
yeah,
not dead. All
God's
right.
Not Dead. Spoilers for God's Not Dead, and it is in the title, isn't it? Um, dude, I mean, like, again, so I'm watching this movie and I'm becoming like, I'm seething. I'm infuriated. I'm like, this is some garbage. So I'm like, I don't care about the message of the movie. This is horrendous. And so the movie gets around the climax because thankfully I've forgotten quite a bit of this movie. And the climax of this film is that all of the characters that the movie has been like, oh, God, 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 God. All of those characters that have been like being preached at and they've been like denying it, all of those characters are invited to a concert, right? This is how the
Ugh.
movie climaxes. They're all invited to a concert for like a big religious band.
Ugh.
And in going to this concert or like in the build up to the concert, things happen to them, like, oh, their mom got in an accident, their little brother is critically in the hospital, their girlfriend broke up with them, like shit happens to these people, and it all brings them down to like some kind of low point. And the movie, this happens to everybody, right? All of the characters, this happens to all of them, ignoring anything about storytelling, about like some bullshit. It's just like, oh, coincidentally, everybody, something bad happened to everybody that pushes them to be like, oh, God, please. And God answers everybody's prayers. And so to celebrate that all of their prayers have been answered, they all go to this concert. And then the movie ends with the concert and everybody just like being happy at the concert. This is what this fucking movie is. This is how it ends. And I'm in this church watching this movie and just being like, what the fuck? Just being like, absolutely just being like, what in the actual fuck? And as this happens, everybody at my church, that's like a standing ovation, starts singing and clapping.
Oh.
And I'm, oh my God,
Oh
I'm like dying,
no.
I'm dying. Like, I can't believe this. So then the movie ends. And again, dude, I'm furious. So I'm like, this is a huge waste of time. This is some piece of shit movie that was just preachy as heck. It was nonsense. It made no sense. So after the movie's done, I say to the people that I was with, I go like, could you believe this? Trying to get some sympathy. I was like, can you fucking believe what we just watched? Like this whole shit? And they were just like, I know, right? How great! And I
Of
just could,
course.
dude, I had no friends. I had nobody that I could be like, can you believe this?
You had no one to
'Cause
lean on.
somehow this movie, and if you look up this movie has like shitty reviews. It's not even a good movie. But somehow this
No.
movie, everybody convinced themselves that this was like a great movie. Or maybe they were just like acting like it was just because they'd be like, oh, I can't say that this is bad.
Yeah.
Otherwise people are gonna think that I'm like a demon.
Yeah.
And
Get thee
so
behind me, Satan.
So then it just proceeds the next 20 minutes before I'm able to leave. Proceed to just be like a circle jerk with everybody being like, "Oh, how great, how impactful! We have to recommend this movie to everybody." And you know that it's one of those movies that ends with everybody like texting somebody. Like the movie ends like when they're at the concert, everybody's like texting each other, like have messages and their moms. It's one of those like it's one of those movies that tries to end with like a call your parents kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So then after this,
Spread the good word.
exactly. So then after this, everybody's just talking about how everybody has to share the movie. People are texting each other, calling each other, and I'm just witnessing it. And I'm
Right.
like, oh my God, dude, this is again, this was one of the worst experiences
Yeah.
of my early like
Yeah.
childhood.
Everyone,
My,
I have great news. There's this guy named Jesus, and he's gonna torture us all. But if you love him, he won't.
dude, and I couldn't believe it. And then years later, like I think when I was like 18, I met somebody who then asked me, without a shred of irony or anything like that, straight faced. They were like, "Have you seen God's Not Dead?" You know, and I was like, "Oh my fucking God!" I was like, "No way!" I was like, "No way! This is what you're fucking asking me." And I was like, "Yeah, I saw God's Not Dead." And they were like, "Oh man, if you saw God's Not Dead, then you have to see God's Not Dead too."
Two, yeah. Oh my God.
No, I'm not seeing that.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was just.
That's horrific, man. I,
Yeah.
that's so funny. That it's so funny because you have like a guy named a guy like Nietzsche who said God's dead, and he was like a
Right.
brilliant man, and then the rebuttal is just like this little squeak from These filmmakers.
Yeah, exactly.
I had an experience
And
that.
you know that in the movie they make fun of that. You know that in the movie they have like philosophy classes and people are talking about that, and the teacher's like, "Oh no, 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 guys, guys." You know, you already know that. You already know
Yeah.
that's fucking movie.
Well, yeah, I was going to touch on that because it reminded me of I've seen that in like pamphlets too, where they make it's like the atheist evolution believing, have a scientific professor who's like a
Mhm.
snob, and I remember when I was a kid, my uncle would he would come for Christmas and he never had presents for us because he was always like running super super late and
Mhm.
he never got his shopping done, so he would just bring us like things that he found and like wrap them really quick. Like he would bring us stuff that he found lying around his house and like wrap it up really
Mhm.
quick and just be like, oh, here's your present, Merry Christmas. and and dude, one year, I shit you not, he got me a pamphlet.
Mhm.
And it was like a religious pamphlet, and it's like it's a creationist pamphlet, and on the front it has a gorilla like eating a banana, and it says like Big Daddy or something like that with like a question mark. You can look this up, Big Daddy, on Google. But it was the same thing where you go through it. It's like this professor teaching about evolution, and then the whole pamphlet is just some student standing up and being like, "Excuse me, actually, there's no evidence that whales once had legs. These are just vestigial bones." And like at the end of the pamphlet, like the professor gets fired. They're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe
Oh
you let
yeah,
a
here it is. Here it is.
Big Daddy."
Yeah.
Dude, I remember just that year just being like, "What the fuck are
Do you
you?"
see
Wait,
it?
let me see. Yeah, there it is, dude. Oh my god, I had it for years too. I would go flip through it and just laugh my ass off at it.
Yeah.
But it was the same exact thing where they just make the professor in the pamphlet look like a fucking idiot.
It says here, Big Daddy. It says the most widely distributed anti-evolution publication. Oh my god.
Because I think for a while my uncle, like, I don't, dude, I want to know how he got his hands on that, to be honest with you. I mean, he went to like a mega church for a while, I think,
Yeah,
but
probably from there. Probably from there.
oh god. Anyway, yeah, I love ripping religion, but fuck, Jesus, it gets
Well,
frustrating after a while.
um, well, all of this conversation that we've had being had, what do you say that if we firmly move into our film topics?
Yeah, yeah, sounds good, man. Um, I guess one that I had was did you see the trailer or the promotional?
I
Not the
did
yeah,
for the
not the.
killer.
Oh,
Yeah,
you knew what I was gonna ask you that?
I knew what you were gonna
How
say.
the fuck
Yeah,
did you know that? I actually didn't watch the trailer, but you did?
I did.
Oh
Yes,
wow, this is the first scenario where you've seen the trailer. And
I knew you were gonna. I knew you were gonna ask you that because that's like the one thing everybody's talking about. Um,
what's your
film
impression?
wise, because you know that in film wise we're like experiencing a drought. You know, where it's like we have nothing. Like the only thing, because you know they've been on the strikes, movies are not even getting made. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, I
so
looked it up
it's
the other day. It's like there's still no resolution. But and
we're only.
for
Go
context, what
ahead.
we're talking about is The Killer, the upcoming David Fincher film. Anyway, go
Mhm.
ahead, Edward.
But yeah, because it's like the only other thing that it's like coming out that people are looking forward to, it's like the Scorsese movie, Killers of the Flower Moon. That's it,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, this Fincher trailer dropped, and I saw it. I just saw like somebody just shared like I saw somebody just share that the trailer was like great. It's like, oh, this trailer's amazing. And the trailer, like the clip the person shared of the trailer, the person just shared the whole trailer, and the photo of the trailer also is just or at least the trailer that I watched, it was the poster for the film.
Hmm.
And I looked at the poster for the film, and in looking at the poster, I was like, the person in that poster looks like Michael Fassbender. That was like my thought, you know. I
Yep.
was like,
Yep.
so I was like, wait, because and there's a previous podcast. I don't remember which one it was, but you and I like talked about Fassbender in a podcast, and we talked about like how he's been just being like a race car driver.
I
um,
thought of you immediately when I saw that he was
exactly.
in this.
Yeah, so I was like, because we talked about like it's like he's one of my favorite actors. You know, I've always really loved Fassbender, and you know, we had that conversation where I was just like saddened but happy for him that he had found, I guess, like a passion outside of acting.
Yeah.
So I saw that, you know, and I was surprised because this is like some sneaky shit. Because you and I, you remember, we could listen to that podcast that we did. Because in that podcast, I went on IMDb and I saw like what he had. He had no upcoming projects. It just had that the last movie that he made was like I think like one of the X-Men movies that he was like required to do. And before that, it was just like that movie, The Snowman, that was like horrendous,
Yeah.
that has like a 10% Rotten Tomatoes. So I remember just being sad because I was like, oh, if he's gonna stop acting, he's going down on like a really sad note, you
Yeah.
know, making one of the worst movies of his career, you know, after just making like a bunch of like schlock, like the Assassin's Creed movies and those fucking superhero movies. So I was just sad because I was like, this guy's like one of the great actors of our time, you know. So again, I saw the poster and I was like, "Holy shit! That looks like I was like, that looks just like Michael Fassbender."
Yeah.
So I played it just because of that. I was like, "Is that him?" And that's him. And the trailer was great. It was one of those. It was the kind of trailer. Like I like those kind of trailers that just have like a character constantly repeating something. It's just repeating the same thing the whole trailer, and it's just kind of fastly showing you like all this shit that happens in the movie. What you just hear this character basically telling you, I guess what they're all about at the beginning of the movie. It feels like a trailer that you could have made for the movie Drive with Ryan Gosling, you know, where and if you just have him saying like, you know, be there at the time that I say, because there's like a line in the movie in Drive, it just goes like, you be there at the time, I will be there, I'll show up at the time that I'm supposed to show up and I'll drive, you know.
Right.
It's like if you just have a trailer where he just says that again and again and again. So that's the trailer for this film. And it was great. The trailer was great. Obviously, the Fincher is somebody who's just been hitting hundreds for the past 20 plus years.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, it's great to see like, oh my God, fucking Michael Fassbender, it's returning to films in a Fincher film, you know. So I have nothing but high hopes. I'm already hyped. I'm hyped.
Yeah, it seems like a return to form for him. I still haven't seen Mank. That's the only.
Neither have I.
I think that's the only. Excuse me. I think that's the only Fincher film that I haven't seen besides Benjamin Button, of course. But we won't go there. Or we can, but you know.
Yeah.
But
Sane.
yeah, it seems like a very. Yeah, I got really excited when I just the poster. I was like, "Oh shit, this is a Fincher film right here." You know, this is a true to form Fincher film. You know, so I'm excited about it, man. Definitely. What's the release date on this bad boy? September 3rd.
I think it's this year, and I think it's one of those movies that either it's going to have like a dual release, or maybe like within the month or within the few weeks, or it's going to be in streaming services.
Oh yeah. Okay, so there's going to be a limited theatrical release on October 27th, and then
so
it's going to start. Near. Yep, and then it's going to start streaming on November 10th on Netflix. Not too much of a wait.
Yeah, yeah. So it's one of those. And it's going to be the same thing with like Killers of the Flower Moon. Initially, Killers of the Flower Moon was going to have something like that, but now it's actually going to have like a full theatrical release.
Yeah.
Killers of the Flower Moon. Yeah, so that's just going to theaters.
Still.
And then I guess eventually going to Netflix or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whoever's letting Scorsese keep making movies, whoever it is, they're going to have their movie in their platform.
Yeah. Oh yeah. What you got, man? You got a film topic you wanted to go over?
Let me see. Which is interesting because I have talked about this before. I have talked about how people should stop what's his name, the guy who made the movie Alien, Ridley Scott. How they should stop Ridley Scott from making movies. Oh, yeah. And honestly, I feel the same way about Scorsese. It's like it's enough.
Really? But Scorsese hasn't gone downhill like Ridley Scott has. I mean, Scorsese, he's still hitting grand slams, man.
I know, but with Scorsese, I feel the same way. Where I just kind of feel like I feel like this industry is too old, and people need to get out of the way for. I feel like these filmmakers need to make space for like younger filmmakers, or at least they have to stop like taking up so much of like the budget, you know? Because Scorsese keeps making movies, but he keeps making fucking expensive movies where they
That's
have,
true.
you know. So it's like at least like make some silly little movies, make some more Kings of Comedies or something. Stop making all these fucking grandiose films, old
Yeah.
man. Like leave some money for the rest of everybody else. And Ridley Scott's doing the same thing. He's fucking remaking like what is it? He's like remaking something, right?
Yeah, we talked about it on
And
that
he
other
made
episode.
Napoleon. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And how weird that fucking trailer looked. Did that
Yeah.
even come out? That shit looked so weird.
No, it hasn't come out. I
I
don't
have
think it
no
has
interest
any.
in seeing that. I mean, some, but
Yeah.
not much.
But he's remaking Gladiator.
Oh my god, that movie does
Yeah.
not need a remake. Or I mean,
Yeah, it's
it's
like
probably a
enough.
sequel, right?
Yeah. I think it's a sequel. Yeah, it's Gladiator 2. It's a sequel.
Ay, ay, ay. Yeah, I mean, fuck, dude. Yeah,
Too fast, too Gladiator.
you know, for
Staring the hologram of Russell Crowe.
yeah, yeah. I mean, from that point of view, I actually definitely agree with you because it's like part of the reason it's so hard for up and coming filmmakers and screenwriters and stuff to break into Hollywood is because studios can just be like, we're gonna have Fincher do it, you know, we're gonna have
Yeah.
Scorsese do
And
it, you
I
know.
don't have an issue with like Fincher and like filmmakers of that of that like generation because it's like no, these guys are still making interesting movies, you know, like him and Anderson, like the '90s guys.
Yeah.
Like I don't have an issue with the '90s guys. I have an issue with the fucking '60s and '70s guys. It's like
Yeah.
guys, enough.
Yeah.
That's enough. Why don't you guys take a cue from fucking Francis Ford Coppola and take a hike? Why don't you guys listen to Tarantino and go like, actually, maybe I've worn myself out. Maybe
Yeah.
it's time for fucking Spielberg to stop making movies that the Oscars always nominate for fucking something. Enough of that fucking guy. Tired of that guy.
Yeah. No, I
Tired of
know,
him.
man.
But no, other than my tangent about I guess hating that all these older filmmakers, I'm not trying to be ageist. It's not really my point. It's just that I just feel like those guys are taking up too much space, and the best of them we've already seen. You know, we've already seen the best movies those guys were gonna make. Like what fucking Scorsese is gonna his masterpiece is really around the corner. It wasn't Goodfellas. It wasn't Casino. It wasn't Taxi Driver. It wasn't The Departed. It's right around the corner.
Yeah.
It might be this one or it might be the other one. It's like, dude, Scorsese, go spend some time with your family, man. Stop fucking around. And definitely, this is not the case for Ridley Scott, because Ridley Scott, that guy's masterpiece was like 40 years ago, and that he doesn't have it in him anymore.
Yeah.
It's time to stop that guy. Ridley Scott, it's time to actually stop.
Yeah, Ridley, we need you to
No.
stop.
But no. What do you say that we jump to our recaps and then we talk about Putney Swope?
Yeah, sounds good, man. And by the way, because we're doing this on a Wednesday, my reminder didn't go off to charge my laptop, so I'm like I'm like is that normal for your laptop to be plugged in, but it says battery is not charging, using significant energy, Google Chrome and OBS? Like, is that normal? I don't get know. I don't know, man. It should. I feel like it should still be charging. Does this charger just suck? I don't get it.
Maybe you need to replace the charger.
Yeah, maybe.
That might be a thing.
Yeah, my dog chewed my other one, I think, is why that one doesn't work, if I remember correctly. Oh no, the other one was like overheating really bad. That's why. So
I think maybe you could replace this one and see if that works.
Yeah.
My computer's also pretty old, but it's not facing that issue at all.
Yeah, because when nothing's running, like when Teams is not running and OBS is not running, it charges fine, but it just went back up from 7 to 8%, so that's good.
Oh jeez! Oh my god, that's how close to the wire we are.
Yeah, it was at 30 when we started. Fuck. I've been watching it, man.
Let's keep it going.
Yeah, let's keep it rolling. All right, hit us with your recap, Edward.
Okay, so the past week, um, I got out of the G's. So finally, I'm out of the G's music-wise. I think, let me see if I listened to like an album in the G's that I'm forgetting. No, oh, actually, no, I did. I listened to Liquid Swords by GZA, the 1995 album. Obviously, GZA, member of
Jizza.
GZA, yeah, but old member, yeah, right. But old member of the Wu-Tang Clan.
Yep.
And this album features a bunch of Wu-Tang Clan members from RZA, Ghostface Killer, Method Man, like you name it, everybody's here. Um, Obviously, Liquid Swords is like a classic album. It features one of the greatest fucking rap songs ever, Fourth Chamber, the seventh song in the album. It's a classic. The beats are incredible. The performances are incredible from everybody involved for the most part. Obviously, there's some questionable bars. Some songs are not as good as others. I don't like Gold very much. There's some beats that are repetitive and too long because obviously this is a 95 album, so it suffers from having 4 minute plus song syndrome for songs that don't need to be that long, for a beat that just loops and goes nowhere.
Yeah.
So it suffers from that a little bit. It's not a perfect album. It's not like it's aged miraculously, although people love to overrate this album. But it's great, you know. The first song, Liquid Swords, is great. All of the old like martial arts films, like samurai movie samples in the album and like the snippets from movies are incredible. Obviously, the Fourth Chamber is an incredible song. Shadowboxing, song number 8, it's great. Songs number 11, 12, and 13 being Swordsman, I Got Your Back, and Bible are really great songs. Like they're everybody's just people have already said everything they have to say about this album. It's classic, classic 90s hip hop. Yeah, great production, great rapping, great beats, everything. You know, questionable bars, questionable songs. You know, but that's it. I think it's great. You know, there's not much for me to say about it other than that. Then I'm gonna weave a little web here because I listened to HAIM. I listened to their discography. HAIM, for those who don't know, is an American alternative rock pop band. Because they mainly make like rock music, but it's on the fringes of like pop a lot of the time. I mean, a lot of the songs are very poppy. Um, but it's alternative just because they incorporate a lot of elements of Americana and country, and they just kind of carry the songs that way. But I listened to their discography. I listened to the 2013 album Days Are Gone. It's an 11-track album, 44 minutes, and I would say that this album is decent. If you go on Apple Music and you go to HAIM, it tells you that their essential albums are this album and their last album. And I would disagree with that sentiment. I think this album is just okay. I don't think it's aged very well. It feels like a 2013 album, like in the worst way that you could say that for like a pop rock album. But the first the first
The
6
worst way
songs,
you could say that. So like Imagine Dragons.
exactly, yeah,
Oh,
like so let me say that. Let me finish what I'm saying, I guess. The first 5 songs, songs number 1 through number 6 rather. So from the song Falling to the song Don't Save Me, those songs are actually pretty good and I really enjoy them. Specifically the song Forever, the song Falling, the song Don't Save Me, and the song Days Are Gone, which is song number 7 actually. I really enjoy those songs and I think those are pretty good songs. But then songs number 8, 9, 10, and 11 are pretty bad songs. So yeah, and they just really feel like aged and like full of shitty like effects and beats and techniques and like, oh, what if we put a little weird hip hop thing here? And it's like, no, it doesn't work. You know, it sounds like ass. You know, the same way that anything from that time that has fucking like Skrillex in it, it sounds like the like ear cancer now. You know, like it's the
yeah,
worst.
yeah.
So yeah, so that album suffers from that, but I would still say that it's like an okay album, like a 5, 6 album. Then I listened to their second album, the 2017 album, Something to Tell You, which I'm a huge fan of this album, and I think it's great. I think this is a great album. I think I would give this album like an 8 or a 9. Like I think it's like great, you know. Um, I only don't like one song, which is "Kept Me Crying," song number 7. Then from songs number 1 through 6, "Want You Back," "Nothing Wrong," to 6, "You Never Knew," and then songs number 8 through 11. So from "Founded in Silence" to "Night So Long," I think are great songs. I enjoy the shit out of this album. I've loved this album since it came out. I have a long history of enjoying it, and re-listening to it was a blast. I had such a fun time. Um, and it's just a great, great rock album. This album actually reminds me of like the Beatles' "Let It Be" album, in the sense that it's like a really straightforward, just rock album, just
Okay.
great rock album. That's the best way that I can put it. Just nice.
Yeah.
Um, and then I listened to their last album from 2020, "Women in Music Part 3." And this album was pretty good. I don't think it was great. I thought it was pretty good. Some of the songs kind of miss the punchiness of like the drums and the guitar solos and the choruses that the second album had. But this album makes up for it with like grooves, rhythm. It incorporates like jazz in some of the songs. It has some funky elements. It even has Thundercat like in a bonus track. Um, but I do have to say that the song number 2 on this album, "The Steps," is so fucking good. Like just listening to that song again, I remember when it came out, and I really loved it then. And re-listening to it now, I was just like, "Oh my god, this song's so good!" Oh fuck, love HAIM. They have 2 great albums and a bad first album, or like a okay-ish first album. But yeah, that's it. Other than that, I
Nice.
listened to the first of I think 3 Hank Mobley albums that I'm listening to. Hank Mobley is a jazz musician from the 60s. I listened to his 1963 album, "No Room for Squares," with a great cover.
Yep.
um, so I listened to his album, and I have to say that this is the kind of album that feels like an album that has music that you see in a show like Louis, the Louis C.K. song, like a show, or like an old, kind of comedy drama, Woody Allen, like New York movie, like the type of song that you would hear like in Manhattan or Annie Hall or something like that.
Hmm.
They just feel like this. They just feel like songs that embody just like showing vignettes of like a city that's kind of bubbling with like a lot of life. So I really liked this jazz album. I thought it was really fresh. Obviously, it's kind of like this live free jazz album. Specifically, song number 2, "Carolyn," song number 5, "Me and You," and song number 8, "No Room for Squares," are great songs. But every song in here is great. It's a great jazz album. But that's it. That's it for albums. And other than that, I watched a couple movies, or rather, a movie. Because as I listened to HAIM, HAIM is a band that has a lot of collaborations with one Paul Thomas Anderson. And by a lot of collaborations, I mean that I think he's directed like 95% of their music videos since the second album.
Oh wow.
So like if you look up behind music videos since album number 2 onward, I think Paul Thomas Anderson directed those music videos. And because of that, the music videos are amazing. They look great.
Yeah.
Great filmography, great fucking directing. So that kind of helped me get into them a lot too, because I really like Paul Thomas Anderson as a director, one of my favorite directors, as you know. Um, and that guided me towards watching Licorice Pizza.
Oh, nice.
Licorice Pizza is the latest Paul Thomas Anderson movie. It came out in 2021, and it stars Alana Haim, one of the Haim sisters, one of the 3 Haim sisters in the band. And yeah, so it all kind of fed it with each other. Like I was like, let's watch Putney Swope, which obviously greatly influenced Paul Thomas Anderson. And I was like, oh, since we're watching Putney Swope, I'm going to watch Licorice Pizza. And also, it just so happened that I was listening to Haim, so it all kind of came together. So I watched Licorice Pizza, and I have to say that it was great. It's a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, so it's great. Um, I
Nice.
would say that like it was pretty funny. Like I laughed a lot in that movie. It had like 10 scenes. It had great like cameo performances from Bradley Cooper and Sean Penn.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
but I have to say that if you're the kind of person, and I'm saying that to the listener, if you're the kind of person that needs structure, or needs like a plot, or needs clear character motivations, you're not gonna like this movie, because it's very much like a loose goose, like you're just kind of seeing scenes and characters do things, and there's no grand scheme.
Yeah.
Um, so if you're somebody who doesn't like a movie like The Big Lebowski, or doesn't like most of Robert Altman's films, or doesn't like Inherent Vice, like if you don't like those movies, Inherent Vice being a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, if you don't
Yep.
like those movies, you're probably not gonna like this one. Um, and this one's a little bit controversial too, because it's like a romance between like a young guy and like a woman in her 20s, played by the Haim sister. And but it's not played like in a weird or gross or creepy way. It's played very kind of like, in a way, like innocently, or like with a lot of heart. um but yeah, the movie was funny. I really enjoyed it. I love movies, as you know. I love movies like Inherent Vice. I love movies like The Big Lebowski. So I had no trouble like sticking with this movie for the 2+ hours of it.
Yeah.
Movie looks great. Paul Thomas Anderson shot it himself, so he was the DP on it, which he also was the DP on Phantom Thread, which he never admitted or gave himself credit to. But he was the DP for this one, and it looks amazing. Yeah, it was a solid film. Solid, like 8 out of 10, maybe a 9 out of 10 on a rewatch PTA movie. Yeah, like I would rate this in my top 5 PTA films.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta check that out. It's been on my watch list for a little while.
Yeah, because the thing is that old PTA movies for me have decreased in my appreciation for them. Like Boogie Nights and stuff like that. I don't really care for those movies too much anymore.
Yeah.
But the movies that he's made in the 2000s are the movies that keep kind of growing for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it for me. That's it for my recap. What you got?
Nice, man. Yeah, man. So this past week, let me see. Letterboxd. I watched.
I've not been updating my letterbox. if you've noticed.
Yeah, man. So let's see. Friday night I rewatched Empire Strikes Back. Since summer's coming to a close, I wanted to fit that in. What can I say? Hey, fucking awesome. Empire Strikes Back. It's a perfect movie. Yeah, not much to say about that other than what's already been said. And then I watched Blue Valentine for the first time.
Really? Sad sack movie, huh?
Yeah, dude. Oh my god. Wow. I thought it was a great movie. I mean, I gave it 8 out of 10. Ryan Gosling, he crushes it at every role that he's in. I mean,
he does.
I don't know if I've seen a Ryan Gosling movie that I don't like. Honestly, like I think he's awesome, man.
He's great. Yeah,
he picks great roles, and yeah. But Blue Valentine was interesting because I found myself thinking a lot about. In my mind, I was forming sort of a triple threat match between Blue Valentine, Before Midnight, and Marriage Story. And I started to kind of compare and contrast them in my mind. So when thinking about Blue Valentine, for those who don't know what it is, it's basically about a marriage on the rocks, a very just toxic, turbulent relationship that started out like any relationship, just innocent and with hope for the future and whatnot. And what I have to say is that what was interesting is that, so you watch a movie like Marriage Story, right? And it's all, I don't remember as much about Marriage Story as I'd like to, but I remember it being great. I remember giving it like a 9 out of 10, I think, at the time that we watched it. And I do remember, for the most part, that just feeling bad for the husband in that movie because he's just getting divorce fucked, like just it's terrible for him. I felt the opposite in Blue Valentine. I fucking hated the husband, dude. I hated Ryan Gosling's character in this movie. I don't know. I don't know, because I saw stuff online about it where it's like, who do you think was worse in the relationship in Blue Valentine? And I'm like, is that even a question? I mean, like, all the husband, Ryan Gosling's character does the entire movie is just nag his wife's ear off, like the entire movie, And that's the thing. Like, I know I'm at the risk of sounding like I'm white knighting or like taking the side of like females and stuff. But it's like, no, I was fucking on Adam Driver's side in Marriage Story. Like, dude,
Mhm.
men are terrible to women. Women are terrible to men. It all depends on the situation. And I don't take
Mhm.
us like one side.
Mhm.
There are people out there who will I always take one side or the other depending on the gender. And it's like,
Mhm.
no, fucking, and that shouldn't even be a controversial statement. Like, men are horrible to women, women are horrible to men,
Mhm.
men are horrible to each other, women are horrible to each other. People are horrible to people in certain scenarios. And
Mhm.
Blue Valentine, like, the whole movie is just him he just doesn't let Michelle Williams' character, his wife, just breathe ever in that movie. It's like he always needs something from her. He's just like a vampire or a parasite in that movie.
Mhm.
It's just like he just always, she gives him like she makes like one little twitch and he's just like, what? What was that? What was that about? What? Talk to me.
Mhm.
What? It's just like, fuck, shut up, man.
Mhm.
Shut the fuck up. Um, but it's a great movie. The way they portrayed this toxic relationship. And I'm not saying Michelle Williams' character was perfect either. Particularly in the flashbacks, I mean, she cheated on her boyfriend to be with Ryan Gosling's character, and what was interesting was the part where she was talking to the doctor and said she had like 20 something sexual partners up to that point, and she was like at a college age in the flashbacks, I'm pretty sure. And that was
Mhm.
kind of like interesting. It's like, oh, it's you know, I mean, there's nothing, I guess, wrong with having a ton of sexual partners like that, but it can be indicative of, you know, something. I don't know. It was
I don't
interesting.
remember
Go
I don't
ahead.
remember that movie very well because I saw that movie like a really long time ago. Um, but I remember that my interpretation of that movie, like at the time, was just kind of like my thought of it was kind of like, oh, this is something that like this is like something just born out of like naivety or like I
Yeah.
remember that was like my thought of it. I was like, oh, these people just didn't know who they were themselves and they didn't fully know who the other person was. They just very quickly kind of got into this because he got her pregnant, right?
Yeah. Well, the implication is that her boyfriend at the
Yeah,
time got her pregnant.
exactly. He just kind of took over for that.
Yeah, which was
Yeah, he
kind
was
of
just like,
like,
I don't care.
yeah.
Yeah. So that was kind of my impression of the film, where it was just kind of like, oh, this is just a movie that's presenting us with like two troubled characters. Because Ryan Gosling was just kind of the kind of guy that in that movie he was kind of the kind of guy that it's like, oh, he's like the kind of guy that it's like cool when you meet him, and he's like a young guy, but he's already peaked, and you don't know that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's the thing that happens with him because then like he just gets old and fat and bald, and he's just like a painter or something.
Yeah, he's a painter and he drinks like
Right.
at 10 in the morning.
And she's like not happy with that, but it's like, well, that's who the guy was. So it's like it's kind of like a movie of like of um of just kind of setting up like being like these people are just these like really like broken folks
Yeah.
and they're gonna be broken together, but they're not the right kind of broken for each other. They just happen to find each other at this point in time. They're never good together, you know. So that's like kind of
Yeah.
like the shitty part about it. But you see that they love each other. At least Ryan Gosling really loves his wife, regardless of however fucked up everything is. That's kind of how I remember that movie. It's just kind of being like these guys were destined to fail.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you saw it. I saw it way more recent than you, and you gave it a better review than I did. But
No, you had a really good way of putting what you said anyway.
thanks for thanks for giving me a little layup there. Let me play the game with the controller unplugged. Nah, man, I'm kidding. But yeah, no, I think you're right. Even in the flashbacks, you had the sense of like
No,
this
I never
feels.
fell for that.
I'm sorry.
As a kid, I never fell for that.
I'm sorry.
As a kid, I never fell for that. I was never like the kid that played with the controller unplugged. I was never that kid. Are you there? And right now, for the audience, Jake is completely frozen. And there is just a still image of his face. As I asked, "Are you still there?" I can only assume that can only assume that his computer completely died. So yeah, there he is. That I've been laughing for the past like minute and a half because I was like telling the audience, I was like, "Oh, Jake's computer probably died down." But I can't hear you if you're talking to me. I don't know if you're muted, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, I was muted.
Okay.
I was muted. Of course, man.
So,
Fuck.
For the audience, the rest of this podcast will be as it was when we did
on the Vampire's Kiss
when we did
one.
the Vampire's Kiss episode.
At least we're toward the end and not like halfway through.
Halfway through, yeah. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but yeah, like my feeling was like even when they were younger, you know, you're right. It was very naive and it was very.
Dude, I have a picture of when they froze.
Let me see it.
I'll send it to you. It's like this.
That's funny, man. Yeah. But you know, and what was interesting, so then I compared it a little bit to Before Midnight, and what I realized is that Before Midnight is a way better movie. Part of the reason for that, it's not the whole reason, but part of the reason is on the level of execution. Blue Valentine it's very like just outright, this is toxic. These people have got to get the fuck away from each other yesterday. You know, Before Midnight is a lot more nuanced than that. It's more painful watching Before Midnight, in my opinion, because it's like, oh, these two people are actually great, and we've seen that the past two movies. They're great together. But there's just these issues that are both within their control and some that are out of their control that are driving a wedge between them. And it's actually more heartbreaking, that film, I think.
Right. And I agree. I agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you.
Because the problems aren't so glaringly like, you're not like, get the fuck away from each other. You're more conflicted, where it's just like, but by the end of Blue Valentine, I'm like, yeah, they should fucking break up. Like, please. Get away from each other. Dude, stop yelling at your wife and grabbing her and like, you know, fucking sexually assaulting her, by the way, in the fucking hotel scene. Jesus Christ. Can't forget to mention that. But anyway, I thought that was an interesting little mental triple threat match that I created in my head, kind of comparing those three movies.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
Thanks, man. And then I've been continuing to watch Stranger Things. I'm on season 4 now, which is the latest season with the Vecna character, the Pinhead, Freddy Krueger type character. Dude, season 4 of Stranger Things rocks.
Really?
Dude, it fucking rocks cock, dude. Like, it's great. Best season yet. The storytelling is impeccable. The way they build up the villain is awesome. The character work that they do with Millie Bobby Brown's character, Elle, she truly is the heart of the show, man. Her character is fantastic. It's like a cross between in season 4, it very much feels like a cross between Carrie and Frankenstein's monster. The theme, the character work, and on a character level and thematic level, what they're doing with her character and how they're developing it. My only complaint is that because there's more storylines in this season than any of the other ones. What I mean by that is it's more fractured, where it's sort of like Game of Thrones almost in season 4, where people are so split up and scattered across various locations. They've done that in all of the seasons, where characters split up throughout the show, especially in seasons 2 and 3. And then it's always satisfying to see them slowly converge until the season finale, where they all come together and use the various pieces of knowledge or various things that they've been accomplishing to work together, you know? And it creates new friendships and new relationships and things like that. But in season 4, they do it to, again, like almost the Game of Thrones level extent, where it's like really fractured. And my only complaint with that is inevitably there's going to be one or two storylines where you care about them way less than the other stories that are going on. So you almost kind of want to just fast forward through certain storylines.
Yeah.
Think of Game of Thrones whenever Bran was on screen.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But no, season 4 of Stranger Things fucking rules. And then, dude, funny enough, I, for the first time, being a fan of Mike Judge and Office Space, I've been watching King of the Hill.
Oh, look at that! How's that, man?
It's great. And like, here's the thing about King of the Hill. Have you seen much of King of the Hill, or?
I've seen a few episodes.
Yeah. So what's interesting about King of the Hill, and you might, maybe you have this. Tell me if you have this relationship with the show as well. Sort of similar to what you said about Samurai Jack, where it's like, when I was a kid and you're like with friends at maybe a sleepover or something and you guys are watching Adult Swim, that was the show that you like, we like flipped past it until we were waiting for Family Guy to come on.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, oh, King of the Hill's still on. It's going to be on for the next 30
Yeah, dude,
minutes.
I waited for King of the Hill to go by so I could watch The Simpsons.
Exactly, yeah. Yep, I've heard that too. It was like King of the Hill came on before The Simpsons, or you know, but you realize why we never stopped on that show.
It's so dry.
Well, yeah, it's very quiet and it's very adult, you know, where it's like Family Guy, it's an adult cartoon, but it's also for middle schoolers. You know, it's like for a lot of ages. There's a lot of like energy in that show and The Simpsons, but King of the Hill, it's very much like for adults, I think. But yeah, it's great, man. Bobby, what are you doing?
Yeah, I still have to check it out. Like seriously, like sit down and watch it.
Peggy, I think Bobby's been masturbating in his room. Why is he masturbating? But yeah, that show's great, man. It's funny, dude. My favorite dynamic is, my favorite thing ever is how he has that neighbor whose wife is always banging the Native American guy. Yeah. And like his son is clearly the Native American son, not his own.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know that one. Yeah.
That shit is hilarious. And like Hank will just come around her house and be like, "Oh, I'm looking for Daniel Redcorn," or whatever his name is, Redcorn, something Redcorn. He's like, I know he's here.
I know he's here.
Just come out.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And then yeah, dude, pretty much just on the music side of things, nothing too crazy. Just been fucking pounding my head against my work desk to Rage Against the Machine. Yeah. Yeah, a little bit of Death Grips too, but I don't know, dude. Like, I've been so fucking angsty and just pissed off having to work these past few days. Just, you know, people listening know. You know, corporate world, man, just sitting there fucking, you know, waiting for the hours to tick by, hoping that one day you can do what you're passionate about. Yeah. Trust me, we're working toward it, folks. We're working toward it. But yeah, just fucking smashing my head against the keyboard, listening to Rage Against the Machine for the past few days. Just like, their lyrics are great. Like, Rage is fucking awesome. I mean, dude, the title of the band, the name of the band says it all. I mean, that's the subject of pretty much every song is just fighting the system. Yeah. Whether some songs are more political than others, some are just about discontent with working, or, you know, just whatever it is. Some of my favorite songs, I guess, to rattle them off, I really like Maggie's Farm. That one's definitely about just the discontent of a work environment and working for the man, you know. Pistol Grip Pump is really catchy. Microphone Fiend, Without a Face, Born as Ghosts. And then of course there's the big hits, you know, Bomb Track, Wake Up, Killing in the Name of, you know, there's all those. But yeah, Rage Against the Machine has been my self-medication this week as I grow continually disgruntled with the fucking work world. But,
Yeah.
but
You and me both, my friend.
yeah, man. But you know, we're young, man, and we're working our way out of it, man. We're dedicated artists, man.
Yeah.
We'll get there. But anyway, that's it for me, man.
Well, Mr. Jake, let's talk about Putney Swope, the film of the week. Tell me what your impressions of that movie are.
Well, I will say this: the very first scene.
It's incredible. I thought it was incredible.
Oh yeah. And like the very first scene, I immediately was like, dude, this is the show Louis.
Mm-hmm.
This is that show. Like every scene in the show Louis that has David Lynch in it was feels so much like that opening scene.
Mm-hmm.
And not just the scenes with David Lynch in Louis, but you know, like a lot of Louis really feels like this movie. You could tell that was a clear influence. Just the fucking, dude, the boss, like the chairman or whatever, just dying on the table, and then them like immediately electing a new one.
Oh, dude, but like, how that scene went, because what is it? The guy just keeps yelling at him. He's like, "How many syllables, Mario? How many syllables, Mario? How many syllables, Mario?" And he keeps like saying like 2 or something. And then he just dies. And after he dies, the guy just continues. "How many syllables, Mario? How many syllables, Mario?" That shit was fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
And then they take his watch and they take his wallet in front of his son.
Yeah. Oh, it was great, man. Dude, one of my favorite lines in the movie was when they were shooting that commercial too, and the woman like couldn't say the lines or whatever. Yeah. And then the director's like, "Look, I want to be at home writing my novel. You want to be acting in Macbeth, playing Macbeth, but we're both here."
Yeah.
But dude, that right there, man, is that brings me back a couple minutes ago to what I was talking about, that fucking discontent with like the work world. It's like, I fucking just want to be I'm like sitting here doing like something that's not my fucking passion at all. Yeah. But yeah. What about you, man? What were your impressions?
I love how the film opens I love how it opens with this guy just arriving in a helicopter. And he's just like so full of intent. And I'm like, what the fuck is he doing? So he walks in the room with all the executives and he just goes, "Beers for men who doubt their masculinity." Yeah. It's like, beer is a pee-pee drink. And then he leaves. And the guy goes like, "We paid him $28,000 for that." And one of the other guys goes like, "Well, he's right." So then they're trying to build basically like a campaign to like cater to like male insecurity. I thought that was great. I thought, again, like the whole thing with the guys like talking and like kind of stuttering and them helping him finish his words, and the fact that they couldn't help Mario finish the last one made him die. I thought that was great. The fact that the one guy goes like, "Well, I'm the vice president, so now," and the other guy goes like, "No, this is a democracy. We're gonna vote," and that all of them vote for Putney, and that they all go like, "Oh, we voted for him because we thought that there was no way anybody else was gonna vote for him." But we all voted for him, so he ended up being the president. And he fired everybody and replaced everybody with like his friends and family,
Yeah. Yeah.
And he left that one guy. He left that one guy. And then when they were like, "Oh, the company's not doing well, Putney," that one Asian like businessman shows up, and he's like, "I have this mousetrap thing." And then the one white like businessman that he left like pitches this whole thing about like Columbus arriving and shit. And the guy goes like, "That's the greatest story I've ever heard." And he lives like he. This is a racial remark. I'm not gonna repeat that. There's like some fireworks happening outside. I don't know if you hear that boom, boom, boom. This is gonna be part of this recording. Do you hear that?
No, it won't. No, it won't, because the background noise reducer will take it out.
Yeah, the fucking fireworks. But they always do that in this fucking city. But yeah, so when he does that, and then Putney immediately fires that guy. It's like, "You're fired." I was like, "What the fuck?" And then there's like his pattern in the film because Putney has no ideas. Putney's like, Putney's like creatively bankrupt. So when he just keeps hiring people to give him ideas, and then he fires them right away after they give him like the idea. He's like, "You're fired," or he goes like,
Yeah.
"Hey, fire that guy." So I thought that was incredible.
That was cool.
Let me see. If that scene where when the Asian businessman shows up and there's like a guy throwing like firecrackers and shit, PTA stole that scene and he put it on Boogie Nights. In that scene where like they're like with Alfred Molina and there's like a little Chinese like man like just throwing all these firecrackers and exploding them. That's the same thing. He took it from this movie.
Yeah, right. Fuck,
Um,
dude.
I really liked when the photographer showed up and he's like, "Oh, I'm this photographer that's worked with this person and this person and this person." And Putney's like, "Oh, yeah, you're great." Putney goes like, "Oh, you're the best in the business. Like, how much is it gonna cost?" And the guy goes like 9,000. And Putney's like, "Ah, it's too much." And the guy goes like, "Oh, it's 6,000." And he goes like, "Ah, it's still too much. 1,200." And then Putney's just like quiet looking at him. And he goes like, 350 is the lowest I can go." and and Putney goes like, "If that's the lowest you can go, then I'm not gonna give you the job." And then the guy goes like, "I'll do it for free." And he goes like, "I'll do it for free. I really need the work." And then Putney goes like, "If you'll do it for free, that means that I could hire anybody. So if I could hire anybody, I'm not gonna hire you." It's like, get out.
I love when the guy like comes in and asks Putney for a raise.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's like, "Well, if I gave you a raise, I'd have to give everyone else a raise, and they'd still be making more than you in that case.
Yeah.
So we'd be right back."
Yeah. And he goes like, "Oh, I hadn't thought about it that way." And it's like, "Well, because you haven't thought about it that way is the reason why I haven't given you that raise."
Yeah, he's like, "That's why you make less."
That's
than
funny.
everyone
Yeah.
else."
I
What
thought
was your? Oh, go ahead.
no. Well, I was just gonna say that I thought it was a flawed movie for sure, but I just thought it was.
Yeah.
I thought it was fun. It was fun. It was creative. It had a great like idea. I thought Putney was a great character, and like his grifting was great. And I thought it had an interesting ending with him just being like, "Okay, I'm gonna get my money and get the fuck out of here." And he was just kind of like, all the rest of the money, split it between the people who were loyal to me, because I basically
Yeah.
pitched them that I was just selling out, and they were still willing to stay with me, so they just give them the money. And then that one guy just blew all the money away. So I guess that was that. But I could see how like Lewis and like Jim Jarmusch and like Paul Thomas Anderson would watch this movie and feel inspired. Because I feel like this movie does make you feel inspired. Like made me feel inspired because it's like the kind of movie where you're just like, "Oh yeah, you can just make anything into a film." And as long as and as long as you're committed, then that's all that counts. People will see that from it, because people might have hated that movie when it came out, or people may hate that movie to this day because of being maybe like racially insensitive or being just not sensitive at all whatsoever. But I think it's a pretty cool movie. I really liked it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you a little. Like, what was your impression of Putney? Because he was like hard to read for me.
Yeah.
He was obviously, he was obviously fucking. He's pretty smart. It seemed like.
Yeah, Putney. The impression that I got from Putney was that he was just a man who had a conviction, and it was just like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm not going to participate in making like commercials that are just selling people like cigarettes and like toy guns and shit like that. He just didn't want to participate in that.
Yeah.
But in that, and just sticking to his values, he was successful because he kept hiring like creative people and just stealing their ideas. And he made a bunch of money. And it seemed like he just wanted to make a bunch of money so that he could get out of that business because I think he felt like he was soulless. And he wanted to give the people who I guess would stick by him like money so that they could just make something out of themselves. That's the impression that I got from him. It's funny because he married a woman because he had no ideas. Like he was like, "Give me an idea for the thing," and because he couldn't come up with ideas on his own. He just knew he just had a conviction. All he had were principles. So, but he couldn't come up with ideas. So he was just like. He told the woman, like, give me an idea. And she was like, only if you marry me. So he married her. And then the next thing that he do when they come into the room is just like, oh, tell me the idea. Tell me the idea for the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was an interesting take on the corporate grift, you know, just like being like, hey, I'm just gonna, you know, milk this thing for all it's fucking worth, and, you know, so I can get out, you know. Well, dude, that's what I'm doing right now.
Exactly. Because even though Putney was like shitty in the fact that he was just kind of using people, you could still at least respect him because he at least had principles, you know. And that's like the thing that all the guys that he fired didn't have. It's like, oh, these guys don't have principles. They're just a bunch of jokesters. Like they're worse than Putney just because they're like willing to sell people things that are going to kill them. Where Putney's just selling people like you know, pimple creams and like shit like that.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Yeah, but I thought it was a fun time. I really liked the movie. And if you saw at the beginning, it said directed by Robert Downey, and then it said a prince. I don't know what that's about. But the interesting thing is that Robert Downey Sr. passed away recently.
Really?
And again, this ties into Licorice Pizza. Because Licorice Pizza, at the end of the movie, in the credits, it says dedicated to Robert Downey Sr. And then it says a prince. And I was like, what is it? So when I watched Licorice Pizza, because I watched it before I watched Putney Swope, when I watched Licorice Pizza, I was like, what the fuck? Why did PTA say a prince? Like, well, that's a strange thing to do. And then it's like, oh, I guess he called himself that. But yeah.
Yeah. That's funny, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your rating of this movie?
I would give Putney Swope a strong 6.
Gotcha. I would give Putney Swope, I would say a strong 5, probably.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, because it was a little like there are points where I was kind of in pain. Like I was just like, all right.
Yeah, and that's why I'm giving it a 6. Because I felt the same way. Like I appreciated the movie, but I was also like, okay, the beginning of this film was clearly its strongest part.
Yeah, dude. Because when the movie started, I was like, hell yeah, man, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
And then it really feels like it devolves. It just becomes really bizarre.
Yes.
There's just like these weird, I don't know, there's just a lot of weird shit going on that, you know, doesn't make too much damn sense, which, hey, if you like that sort of thing, check this movie out. But yeah, and there's obviously some interesting themes in it, but I just don't know that the story executes on them all that well. It's like you can kind of see the ghosts of what Robert Downey was trying to say, but it's like the blueprint is there, but it's like, you know, he only got far enough to put in the frame. You know, it's like didn't get to the drywall and everything else that's needed.
Right.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. Ultimately, I do just I feel the exact same way you did. I really appreciated the film, but it clearly was like missing things. And in my head, I felt a little bit disappointed because for a second I thought like, oh, you know, this is an hour and 20-minute movie. It's not even long. But for a second I thought like, oh, this whole movie is going to take place in this room with these business guys, and that's going to be a 10 out of 10 movie. And the fact that then it left that, exactly. I was like, oh, this is going to be like fucking 10 Angry Men, but in this room, like with these bizarre characters.
He's a 10 Angry Men.
Yeah. What is it, 12? 12, yeah. 12 Angry Men. Yeah. And the fact that it moved away from that and then it just became what it became, I was like, okay, but I felt a little disappointed. And I still did feel like the movie dragged a little bit, despite the fact of it being so short, you know.
Yeah.
Because then it just becomes... Exactly, yeah, because then it just becomes basically Putney just doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again until it ends.
Oh yeah, it was so repetitive.
Yeah.
Dude, it would have been fucking boss if the whole movie was like just in that boardroom. That would have been
That would have been great. Yeah.
Dude, that would have been awesome.
Yeah, that's what I thought it would be. But alas, it is what it is. I enjoyed it.
Yep. Hell yeah, dude.
Well, all of that being said, Mister, do you have a movie for us for next week?
I do. Next week's film, continuing on the sort of comedy train that we got going here. Next week's film is going to be the 1987 Mickey Rourke starring film, Barfly.
Oh wow! Okay.
Have you heard of this film?
I have.
Yeah, so this movie, it's apparently partially based on the life of American writer and poet Charles Bukowski, who also wrote this movie. But yeah, no, it's I'm looking forward to this one. That's my pick for next week, sir.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I've heard about this movie. So I am very excited. It's gonna be Mickey Rourke in his prime, which is also a very exciting thing. All right, let's do it next week. Everybody, get hyped.
Hell yeah! I will say too, this movie, my interest in this movie peaked as someone who's, the corporate world makes them want to fucking drink. I was like, yes, this is the perfect time to watch this movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't worry about me, anybody. I said want to. I didn't say it makes me drink.
Well, my job makes me feel the exact same way.
Yeah. There is a way out. We'll get out.
Yeah.
We'll get out. One will one day listen to this and say, wow, these guys knew they were going places, man.
Yeah. We're going places, listener.
They knew it, man. They knew they were going to be successful artists.
But on that note, everybody, thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. Leave a comment. The things that we always forget to do at the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah. Slide on down, hit that like button, subscribe, bell notification so you get notified of the premieres. That way you'll never miss an episode.
Follow the podcast on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, absolutely. I almost have all of those. It just takes so fucking long for those to process.
Really?
It's not like YouTube. Like it's a fucking process to get those up. So that's why I've been slacking. But we have up to the Skinamarink episode up there.
That's a good.
But
episode.
I'm committing to it, dude. By next week at this time, they're all gonna be on Apple. I've committed to it now.
Hold Jake hostage to this.
Yeah, exactly. Shame me next week if they're not up there. But yeah, thanks, guys.
All right,
we appreciate it.
Well, next time on Film Tangents.
We out.
All right.